the American Academy of Religion. Additionally, as a performer scholar, she consults museums, conservatories, seminaries, and arts organizations on curriculum, live and virtual event programming, and content development. Dr. Jones's book, Flaming: The Peculiar Theopolitics of Fire and Desire in Black Male Gospel Performance, published by Oxford University Press, breaks ground by analyzing the role of gospel music making in constructing and renegotiating gender identity upon Black men. Her research interests extend to global pop music, musics of the African diaspora, music and food, the music industry and the marketplace, and anti-oppressive ways of listening to Black women. I also want to highlight that Dr. Jones has recently been appointed to the faculty at the University of Cambridge as University Lecturer in Music and Contemporary Societies at the University of Cambridge. Before Dr. Jones comes before you, please, I remind you to keep yourselves muted during the presentation. If you have questions, please make use of the chat function. And now, as we also say in Black Church, hear ye her.
Thank you so much, M. Roger Holland. I can't tell you what an honor it is to receive your invitation, and especially because you are an esteemed practitioner within our community. I can repeat several years ago, when you were hired at Lamont, word got to us at the American Academy of Religion, and we rejoiced that someone who understood our tradition would land that job there in Colorado. At the American Academy of Religion, we rejoiced. And so I thank you for the opportunity to share this research in progress and to share space with women I've observed and been inspired by for years, in the ways that they take up space and demonstrate what it means to lift up a Black woman's voice. So as I prepare to share my screen, I will tell you that I will start off my presentation today really situating our conversation in the why. And then we will get an opportunity to get to know one of the celebrated voices in American composition, that of none other than Dr. Nkeiru Okoye, who is among the esteemed women that we have tonight. Some of you know that I just released a book entitled Flaming: The Peculiar Theopolitics of Fire and Desire in Black Male Gospel Performance. This book breaks ground by addressing important narratives among Black gospel music insiders that follow the trope of the flamboyant choir director. This flaming figure signifies on the ways in which Black men are surveilled for their performance of identity in their most worshipful moments. Expanding on this research of gender and sexuality in Black music, I'm finishing a book entitled Sounding Our Signatures: Towards a Womanist Listening for Messianism Among Black Women, in which I consider musical responses to the question, what if God was one of us? To address the query, I examine women and femme-identified intracultural and intercultural listening practices. That is, the ways in which Black women hear each other, particularly as what Dolores Williams called the oppressed of the oppressed in the US political landscape. When will we listen to Black women was the rallying cry echoed throughout the streets and journalistic think pieces on social media following the 2016 presidential and 2018 Alabama senatorial races. These reactions followed the polling results, revealing Black women's collective voting power in arguably the most contentious elections in the 21st century thus far. In an era of women-founded movements such as Me Too, Black Lives Matter, and Say Her Name, some use messianic language to characterize Black women as saving the day, despite being marginalized. The Black Messianism phenomena has been described by Black Messiah scholar William Jeremiah Moses as the perception of a person or group by itself or by others as having a manifest destiny or a God-given role to assert the providential goals of history and to bring about the kingdom of God here on earth, end quote. Thought leaders are noticing the sociopolitical inaudibility of Black women liberators, highlighting the injustices and bias woven into the fabric of the US popular imagination. However, the hypothesis that no one is listening to Black women as liberators falters when considering the reception of the 2021 Guggenheim recipient, Dr. Nkeiru Okoye's critically acclaimed opera, Harriet Tubman, in 2013. Harriet Tubman is derived from the biography of the historical figure, a nurse and Union spy affectionately referred to as Black Moses, the Moses designation being one of several messiahs. Prompted by the aria, I Am Moses, the Liberator, in Harriet Tubman, we hear a manifold performance sounding the power of African and African-American womanhood through the technology of music. This talk addresses the perceived inaudibility of Black women liberators in the US popular imagination by constructing and offering an anti-oppressionist listening and observing of Black Moses, Harriet Tubman, in Okoye's composition. Attending to the ways in which Tubman's head injury trauma from an enslaver's assault and resultant disability, including involuntary altered states, plays a role in her narrative. Her story constitutes that of racial messianism, in which mysticism, contemplation, preservation, and spirituality are intersectionally channeled through her activism and healing practice to adapt from Mystic Soul founder Jade Perry. As we analyze Okoye's cultural intervention through the prism of disability, race, gender, and class, we ask, what is the sound of Black women's messianism? To respond to these questions, I situate our conversation by outlining Black musical sisterhood through a review of the idea of womanism and my approach to womanist and anti-oppressive listening. Then I briefly consider the high tide of recent Harriet Tubman portrayals, pointing to the enduring fissures that divide US communities along a net of race, gender, class, and ability. This moment of historical retrieval illuminates the discontinuity in our retelling of historical accounts, preparing us for the release of Harriet Tubman in venues and vocalities that concert music goers would likely recognize, and yet reviewers seem to misrecognize. To explore my method of anti-oppressive listening, I conclude by comparing media reviews with Okoye's intentional composition strategies that privilege her cultural resources and insights. What do musical frameworks that center African women's imagery, sound, and aesthetics offer us? Allow me to start with insight from the motherland of Africa, specifically that of Igbo musical philosophy in Nigeria. Music is a woman. There is no master musician in Igbo music arts. There is only mother musicianship. And this is from Dr. Meki Nzewi. Black women have been creating music with and for their Black sisters for quite some time. They have also viewed personal access as a simultaneous communal entrance in which we rely on collaboration to get things done. This practice constitutes a womanist appreciation described by Alice Walker that prefers, quote, women's culture, women's emotional flexibility, values tears as natural counterbalance of laughter, and women's strength is committed to survival and wholeness of entire people, male and female, not a separatist, except periodically for health, loves music, loves dance, loves the moon, loves the spirit, loves love and food and roundness, loves struggle, loves the folk, loves herself regardless. This excerpt from her book, In Search of Our Mother's Gardens, provides a culturally relevant multi-sensory motivation for many Black women's pursuit of flourishing among one another. With a womanist listening attuned to Nigerian philosophy of metaphoric music making in which music is a woman, the question, when will we listen to or trust Black women that I asked earlier, is interpreted as, when will we listen to or believe the witness of music, enfleshed, living, moving, and having being among us? To borrow from Marvin Gaye, she is just like music, or rather, music is just like her. And until we listen to her, we have not fully listened, lived, moved, or attained being. So listen to her. Far too often, marginalized people are evaluated by scholars subscribing to dominant culture. People who may love our culture and don't love us enough to hear what matters to us, our everydayness, our regionalisms, our economies, our protocols, our transnationalisms, our giftedness, and the source of our self-regard. People assess us who do not hear our lives or have an inkling of what our flourishing is outside of consumable performances, products, and services. In a misogynoir or anti-Black woman society fraught with accounts of Black women's voices as antagonistic and disregardable, I anticipate that this method of research will be hard to hear and may even trigger cognitive dissonance, especially for people who are unaccustomed or who are accustomed to placing their story in the center. So I advise that listeners to this presentation undertake a discursive, restorative justice posture of auditory-oriented intellectual humility. By auditory-oriented intellectual humility, I'm offering listeners instructions on how to be in community, actively reflect, recognizing the things they believe in might in fact be wrong. To assume this auditory-oriented posture, one may engage in anti-oppressionist listening, in which they actively listen, take a risk, believe the oppressed, don't silence them, resist inserting themselves or correcting the oppressed group's experience of the dominant sociocultural group, and center historically oppressed groups' recounting of their history and truth claims. In 2013, the opera Harriet Tubman by composer and librettist, self-identified African-American and Nigerian-American of Igbo ethnicity, Dr. Nkeiru Okoye, premiered almost a decade after her Jamaican-born and Nigerian-raised mentor, or Nigerian-born, Jamaican-raised mentor in composition, Professor Noel da Costa, passed away. She chose to compose an opera about Tubman because, quote, she's a cultural icon and historic figure, so she is deserving of the operatic stage as other icons. To fugitive slave laws, an underground railroad.
Yeah. Okay, so I have to do that. Okay, thank you. I'll talk to you about the concert.
Mute yourself. Someone is on the phone, I think. The opera, according to the fugitive slave laws, to be an Underground Railroad conductor was to be a stealer of slaves. To run away was to steal oneself. The opera, according to its synopsis, is a two-act theatrical work that tells of how a young girl born in slavery becomes Harriet Tubman, the legendary Underground Railroad conductor. Based on Tubman biographies, the story is told in the context of Tubman's tight-knit family of lively characters. Harriet Tubman carries the universal themes of sisterhood, courage, and doing what is necessary to keep a family together. Moreover, it is a heartwarming tale of two sisters vowing that nothing but death will separate them, despite the slavery threatening to tear them apart. Harriet Tubman was commissioned and produced by American Opera Projects with generous support from the National Endowment for the Arts Artworks grant. And here, I think, was the first visual encounter I had of this opera, featuring a longtime friend of mine, Janina Burnett, whose voice we will hear right here. This is a 6-minute clip, and for our musical purpose, I will play it in its entirety so that you can get a sense of the colors that are musically painted, enlivening Dr. Okoye's work.
midnight air. Her footsteps closing in. What's it gonna be?
If you have enjoyed that performance, I do hope you subscribe to her on social media in some way. Since 2013, the centennial of Tubman's death, there have been several portrayals of one of the most famous conductors of the Underground Railroad, known as Harriet Tubman, that were distributed through popular platforms such as the movie Harriet, starring Cynthia Erivo, the television series Underground, with an entire episode featuring Aisha Hines, and the Comedy Central series Drunk History, featuring Octavia Spencer. And when Viola Davis was the first Black woman to receive an Emmy for work as a leading actress, she wove together words from Harriet Tubman's biography into her speech, revealing the long-standing unspoken tensions between Black and white women that are derived from the racial and hued plantation hierarchies during US chattel slavery, where proximity to hetero-presenting Black men and lighter Black women is preferred over darker Black women and Black queer men. Let's take a look and listen.
This is the first Emmy win and nomination for Viola Davis, who is a graduate of Juilliard.
In my mind, I see a line. And over that line, I see green fields and lovely flowers and beautiful white women with their arms stretched out to me over that line. But I can't seem to get there no how. I can't seem to get over that line. That was Harriet Tubman in the 1800s. And let me tell you something. The only thing that separates women of color from anyone else is opportunity.
However, I assert that Okoye's setting of Tubman's story to music using vocalized folk idioms is true to African-derived oral tradition due to the primacy of speech and singing in the aesthetics. Moreover, I would argue that the sum total representation of Black women's voices, grandmothers, mothers, sisters, aunties, signal a particular register of sonic urgency, a siren embodying a clarion call, setting freedom to music in a culture that has always made our freedom a fugitivity. Since her voice is the mother of talking instruments, we may hear afresh in ancestor and Anna Julia Cooper's voice from the South, a sonic orientation to invoice Black womanhood, evocative of racial messianism. Only the Black woman can say when and where I enter, and the quiet, undisputed dignity of my womanhood, without violence and without suing or special patronage. Then and there, the whole Negro race enters with me. To properly capture the resonance of a Black Messiah, a Tubman, she must be heard, not necessarily read, in her deployment of textured orality that has Black national movement power. I say not read because many of the ways in which Black women's truths, such as Sojourner truth, has been manipulated by white women authors to serve other agendas and maneuvers that were imperceptible to those who assessed the writers' voices in those works by white women about Black women. The sounding of Black women's audible, textured orality is unmistakably intense and true. That said, increasingly, I realize that many people have taken on a Gone with the Wind vision of plantation life in their popular imagination. However, Harriet Tubman is important to give us a sense of from whence she came as we think about plantation life. She was, for example, from Eastern Shore, Maryland, which was one of the major destinations for a practice called buck breaking, breaking the spirits and bodies of Africans to get them to submit to enslavement in the colonies. And here I'll share with you a little bit about buck breaking from a documentary, largely because I have found that many people have no idea of this practice. And I will provide a trigger warning.
Controlling the people. You had a ship full of African men, women, and children who were at the mercy of the captain and all the sailors on that crew. And those men could have sex with anybody they wanted to. The women, the children, and the men.
You had to see 3 months tied down with these white men. There ain't no women there for the most part. When they start bringing women, they weren't even bringing women. They were bringing girls between the ages of 6 and 15 and raping them all. But they also were raping the men. Same things are happening on the plantation to demasculinize the Black man.
Control the slave population is to rape a father in front of his sons, or to take the biggest, baddest Black man on the plantation and do something horrible to him to completely humiliate and emasculate him so that people won't respect him anymore. And that still happens to this day.
In the Caribbean, they had seasoning plantations, which were plantations used to break the slaves. And one plantation, or one place that had a lot of seasoning plantations, was Jamaica. And people have to wonder, what were they doing on these seasoning plantations that was worse than what was happening on the regular plantations? Well, one thing that they were doing on these plantations, especially in Jamaica, they were doing a process called buck breaking, where the white supremacist slave owner or the white supremacist overseer would literally rape Black men in front of the whole Black population in order to break his spirit, in order to break him down as a man, in order to show dominance against him, in order to show the rest of the Black population that this is not your leader. I just made your leader submit to me sexually. And this happened a lot in Jamaica. This is why homosexuality is so looked down upon in Jamaican culture today.
And it was a way primarily of cutting down those who would rebel. In other words, it was a matter of power and control and domination. And they would call it buck busting, but it was really butt busting.
Slavery continued until 1865 for about 2 generations, right? So how do you reconcile that? You can no longer bring in Africans, but you still have the business of slavery, so they still needed Africans to do the work down south, especially after the cotton gin was invented. So you had the creation of breeding farms. 2 of the largest slave breeding farms in the United States were on the eastern shore of Maryland and right outside of Richmond, Virginia. They literally bred black people like cattle. They would have a strong black man have sex with a healthy black woman. That woman could be his mother, his sister, his aunt, his cousin. It didn't matter, because the end product was produce a child that I can sell, bodies that I can sell and ship down to Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina. It was a business.
We had breeding farms in the United States that would put one person from one plantation against another. We even had a system where if you were a breeder, male on one plantation, a female on another plantation, or even on the same plantation, even if you were mother and son, they would mate you. And so I tell a lot of my patients and a lot of my friends, you got to stop using the MF word, because that was a description of what actually happened when the paper bag would go over the head to put one breeder against another when they were related.
Again, Harriet Tubman was from Eastern Shore, Maryland, specifically Bucktown County, Maryland. And so when we hear Tubman described as navigating a head injury caused by protecting a fugitive slave, we must resist the temptation to glorify the injury as though it revealed or enhanced a superpower of an impervious, strong Black woman. On the contrary, she was mutilated and navigating the disability inflicted upon her to make sure her sister and the rest of her siblings, the rest of her family, would not have to endure such torture. When I learned with the day notice that Okoye's opera, based on the heroine from my mother's home region of Eastern Shore, Maryland, was debuting in Finney Chapel at Oberlin, from where both Okoye and I are alumni, I was moved by Black sisterhood to support a fellow alumna's ascension. In the press surrounding her opera's release, I saw that she collaborated with women with whom I went to school, a singular representation for me in my entire life as a formally trained musician. I hopped in the car and drove 6 hours from Bloomington, Indiana to Oberlin, Ohio to witness the first opera to be produced there by a Black woman alumna. The production was a rare opportunity to employ the artistry of current Black students and alums making music for us, by us, in a concert music industry that persistently contests our Black presence. Oberlin is well known as a stop on the Underground Railroad. The Underground Railroad was a network of secret routes and safe houses used by 19th century enslaved people of African descent in the United States in efforts to escape to free states in Canada with the aid of abolitionists and allies who were sympathetic to their cause. The term is applied to the abolitionists, both Black and white, free and enslaved, who aided the fugitives. Oberlin is famous for being the first to admit women and Black students to remedy its financial woes at the time. For quite some time after Black students were admitted, they were not permitted to live on campus, and when they integrated the campus, their incorporation was met with resistance. We can hear this strife sounded in William Banfield's opera, exploring the life of the first professional African and Indigenous American sculptor Edmonia Lewis, who was accused of poisoning a classmate and subsequently prohibited from graduating from Oberlin College. Coincidentally, Edmonia Lewis is known for her sculpture, Moses, that was inspired by Michelangelo, and is an example of how she was such a prolific sculptor that she could imitate anyone. Despite its role in the abolition movement in educating women and Black students, Oberlin, like many conservatories, has found itself struggling to maintain its prestige as a leader in racial and gender equity in admissions, hiring, retention, and culturally relevant musical training for students beyond Western, mostly Eurocentric music traditions. It is due in part to its pervasive unchecked bias towards hegemonic, Eurocentric, concert-oriented forms of music education and presentation traditions in the US collegiate system that diminishes research and practice of indigenous vernacular music and participatory performances. Okoye's Harriet Tubman has received much critical acclaim, attesting to its singular beauty, while imprecisely describing the true story from which it was derived and mischaracterizing the use of speech in the opera. Critics have ridiculed the use of sparse staging of enslavement and situating alongside 20th century operas that depicted the strange African-American experience. Quote, Okoye spins simple Americana into the gold of art music of lasting quality. Harriet Tubman demonstrates how an ordinary person can become extraordinary. It is an uplifting story of a real hero that unfolds with compelling detail and drama. The music is irresistible, invigorating, and vivid, building to an unforgettable and thrilling conclusion. It is a great American opera. And then another wrote, quote, I personally believe that Harriet Tubman will enter the repertoire and be discussed with similar praise as George Gershwin's Porgy and Bess. This is a major composition, very worthy, and was greeted with well-deserved standing ovations, end quote. At a glance, the last review seems quite complimentary. However, this characterization exemplifies one way in which popular listening practices miss the mark by centering hegemonically oriented typecasting. While the all-Black personnel casting and opera genre designation do resemble Porgy and Bess, Greenfest and others' assessment situating Nkeiru Okoye's Tubman alongside Gershwin's Porgy and Bess, is a sort of mishearing that unearths how latent oppression is administered through predominant white or Jewish male-centered great composer auditory practices that constantly view Black cultural products through white legibility and audibility. Whose compositional technique is she evoking? And whose musical facility is she featuring? The answers to these questions reveal something about the disorientation of the reviewer's listening practices. That is, their inadequate homework on who her musical conversation partners and aesthetic muses are. The inaudibility of her idioms of choice also is a failure to perceive the possibility that a musical Moses, a Black Messiah even, could possibly be one of us, a Black woman composer or a Black woman conductor of the Underground Railroad. Indeed, true to the Messianic narrative tradition, the least likely are typically the prime candidates for emerging as a Messiah. Okoye represents a cadre of modern composers whose contributions demand an anti-oppressive listening and musical analysis. Towards a structure of anti-oppressive listening, I propose analysis that includes paying attention to how we consider marginalized music candidates, a possibility orientation with regard to inclusion of genre, techniques and evocation of soundscapes in the composition, reflection on sonic biases and assumptions, versatile music formation, expansion of notions about composers' facility and customization, a search for unsung or unheard stories, and intentional casting practices with attention to the nuances of bodily representation and multicultural facility. Using anti-oppressive listening practices, I observed that Dr. Okoye makes a notable intervention that is impactful to concert performance, concert audiences, and culturally relevant pedagogy in music education. One way to listen to Okoye's compositions is her engagement in the cognizance aesthetic lens of mother musicianship that Dr. Meki offers us, that is sounded among the Igbo in Nigeria. Quote, the ability to formulate and communicate musical sense in a culture's medium of musical expression, subject to the society's cultural sonic references and physical tolerance. Such a performer is then a specialized musical artiste among the Igbo, end quote. In this regard, Okoye draws from a wealth of African and African-American folk material to set freedom to music. Similar to the cognizance aesthetic of mother musicianship, I have written elsewhere about the ways in which foremother or mother iconicity is used throughout Black musical storytelling as a gender-inclusive vision of God or the Messiah, those women who demonstrate the divine who still us to freedom. In my interviews with Okoye in April and September of 2018 and of May 2021, she explained the composition features that position the opera uniquely in the repertoire. Her perspective as a composer, historical context of the plot, composition techniques deployed, and attention to the ideal cultural facility of the vocalist and the textual language choices that she makes. Okoye's perspective and insider-outsider cultural resources as a Black woman composer with Western conservatory training, quote, gave me a practice that by definition, storytellers from other ethnicities can't possess, end quote. She asserts further, it's, quote, birthright combined with life experiences. This shaped my mindset going into the libretto and opera. My perspective is on the story and characters rather than on their enslavement. While characters acknowledge enslaved conditions, they don't call themselves slaves, end quote. This move is consistent with the practices historians have encouraged to humanize enslaved people. Cultural perspective and stakeholding is essential in portrayals of slavery, largely because of the legacy of dehumanization that is not treated with displays of dignity and ingenuity. She says, quote, the extensive historic, cultural, and music research gives it authenticity. The enslaved population is not portrayed as being victimized chattel. Rather, they are individuals who make their own choices and deal with the consequences, end quote. Unlike Gershwin, Okoye attends to the dignified qualities of the enslaved population in spite of their subjugation. Okoye's cultural resources shaped her ability to deploy various coded devices with Harriet Tubman, interrupting the homogeneity of the concert techniques we might be familiar with. We hear her signature composition techniques that make an intervention for operatic artists of African ancestry and the US sonic imagination of vocalized potential by using what she calls vocal orchestration. In my correspondence with her, she indicates her attention to the musician's facility stems from her experience as a Black woman composer interested in exploring what comprises to me the heterogeneous sound ideal that Ollie Wilson wrote about years ago. Quote, I wrote it specifically for opera singers who had additional expertise, such as extended vocal range and a type of historical performance practice that is cultivated in the Academy of the Black Church. This is an invitation to use their extreme ranges to celebrate those voices And it is established at the very beginning of the opera with the sort of singing that one might hear in church. In this case, it becomes vocal orchestration, for lack of a better term, because it is the use of the voice as instrumentation with attention to oral traditions. Setting to folk music idioms, the plot of chattel slavery requires a speculative imagination that recreates and embraces using a vivid aesthetic of possibility to invoice the enslaved through the folk opera idiom, defying reinscription of oppressive imagery through docile musicality and text. And we can see here in the cast the ways in which she has thought through the representation of musical textures and personnel throughout. There's so much that I would typically say about this, but I look forward to even further discussion and engagement with the composer herself about the choices she made in the notation. She lets us know that she addresses this or resists docility with the following quote. Quote, "It is a folk opera, though not because it is written for Black singers. There is an emphasis on non-Western folk music and traditions. Many of the recitatives between the enslaved plantation residents mimic call and response of the Black church. Having a primarily Black cast meant the community could be varied," end quote. And the casting is inclusive of the broader community, ensuring that people with various skills are represented. This proves a sense of everydayness and accessibility in the sonic textures. Quote, she said further, "The Black characters could be good, bad, highborn, free, enslaved, adventurous, protagonists, and antagonists, etc." End quote. In addition, she does the work of highlighting how colorism and hueism are important ways of understanding power dynamics in slavery and the development of racial stereotypes over time. Quote, "The libretto touches on issues that remain pervasive, such as class, values, and colorism. The colorism point is especially unusual in this case, since there is no quote unquote tragic mulatto figure. Also, the character understands that freedom, rather than whiteness, is a goal and do not speak disparagingly of white. Librettists from other ethnicities probably wouldn't have the cultural insights that would allow this to happen." And lastly, Okoye addresses the politics of surrounding her approach, the politics surrounding her approach to the libretto, specifically highlighting the fact that many critics have contested the words she ascribes to Tubman, not realizing that she is quoting Tubman's writings. Quote, "The libretto has no slave dialect. The singers use quotes from Tubman and accent rather than dialect. Critics, mainly white, have remarked that Tubman sounds as contemporary as I do, not realizing these are quotes. They still buy into the widely circulated myth that enslaved Africans had their very own slave dialect. In reality, whites made up the dialect to justify keeping Africans enslaved. If they were that simple-minded, they needed protection and moreover deserved to have whites treat them as animals. The dialect also was a source of entertainment in minstrel shows," end quote. And I want to note here that this particular insight has been taken up by scholars such as Dr. Kira Gaunt, who mentioned it at our most recent gathering of SEM. And so many of our peers had not taken into account how archival recordings of the formerly enslaved actually bolster Okoye's observations and findings as a musicologist. Possession of oneself, that is self-possession, seems like a metaphoric and real life inalienable right. Unfortunately, for people of African ancestry and indigenous people in the United States, this has been a disputed right that we are excellent at forgetting to provide. Harriet Tubman, stealer of slaves, was a once unsung story of how Black people found a way to be unconstrained by the enforcement of unjust laws. And yet, our Black Moses, Harriet Tubman, resides in a historical procession of Black women who show up as liberators, forging paths, making ways out of none, causing the enslaved to sing in strange lands while being grossly taken for granted. Okoye path breaks by moving beyond cultural assimilation to tell the story. Assimilation is inadequate for capturing her sounding of liberation. Okoye's innovative approach incorporates a broader range of composition techniques to tailor the music to fit the vocalist's culturally formed skill set and extended vocal ranges. Harriet Tubman calls us to continue the folk religious tradition of doing as the Spirit says do, and doing it how we feel it in everyday life, from abolitionism to music making, ensuring that all get free in every sphere by any means necessary. Music is a woman, and it is mother musicianship of her that liberates us. Listen and be free. Thank you.
Wow. That is awesome, Dr. Jones. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and your insights. This is not the first time I've heard you speak, and I always feel like I need more. I get greedy. I need more of these wonderful insights that you share with us. We're going to take a short break in just a moment, but before we do, I wanted to give those in attendance just a few moments to ask questions. We ask that you pose your questions in the chat and not directly, and I will share them with Dr. Jones, or Dr. Jones can address them directly herself, as she also has access to the chat. But if we don't have any questions, then we'll pause here. Think of this as an intermission, everybody. If this was a live presentation, we would take a pause because Dr. Jones is going to join our panel that will follow this. And we want to allow her a moment to refresh herself. She has just poured out tremendously, and we want to allow her to refresh and then come back and share, join the panel. So far, I'm seeing wonderful, deserved accolades. It seems like we don't have questions, or maybe people are trying to gather themselves, and I understand that. Everybody's like, oh, I'm just wowed. I'm overwhelmed. And you all need time to process, which is fine. I'll give you just one more moment, and then if nothing comes from the chat, then we can take a break. I see a message.
Sure. Ms. Janet asked if I can repeat my adaptation of Dr. Mekki's words, which is, music is a woman, and it is mother musicianship of her that liberates us. Listen and be free. Thank you, Dr. Okoye. The hard part of being a music researcher with living subjects is they hear what you say about them, and they can send you a little email or give you a little call and tell you whether or not you missed the mark.
Awesome, awesome. All right, so I tell you what, everybody, why don't we take a pause here? It is 5:01 by the MacBook Air. That's what it says. It is 5:01. Why don't we take a 12-minute pause if Dr. Jones is in agreement? A 12-minute pause. So we will reconvene at 5:14. Let's make it an even 5:15. That sounds good. Yeah, I like even numbers. So at 1:15, we will reconvene with our panel. Stay tuned. We have a little station break announcement for you all. We want you to know about the wonderful things going on here at the Lamont School of Music. Remain muted, everybody. And then when we come back, it'll kind of be like one of my favorite shows, Real Time with Bill Maher. And we'll come back with a panel to talk about some of these wonderful things. Or Sunday mornings with George Stephanopoulos. I love those panel discussions with some powerhouse. He calls it a powerhouse roundtable. And I think that's what we will bring to you. So we will reconvene at 5:15, everybody. Thank you so much for coming.
We are an all Steinway school and our practice rooms have windows, so our students appreciate having natural light and a view during marathon practice sessions. At the end of the hall is our suite of virtual practice rooms. In these, you can control the amount of reverb the space gives, allowing you to replicate all sorts of situations, from a recording studio to a large performance hall or cathedral. The Lamont School of Music is housed in the Robert and Judy Newman Center for the Performing Arts, located on the southeast corner of the University of Denver campus. In this virtual tour, we'll take you through the practice, rehearsal, classroom, and performance spaces that make up this 180,000 square foot art center. The Newman Center opened in 2003 and has since been acclaimed as one of the nation's finest university arts centers. While it appears from the outside to be one large building, it actually consists of 6 distinct buildings, each with its own foundation, separated one from another by 2-inch gaps for acoustical isolation. The performing venues that make up the south half of the building are shared by Lamont and DU's own Newman Center Presents series, a multidisciplinary, multicultural offering of renowned touring artists. The Lamont School of Music occupies the 5 floors of the North Wing, known as Virginia E. Trevorrow Hall. We'll start on the top floor and work our way down. The 5th floor houses 30 soundproof practice rooms and the student lounge, which features a rose window made of carved Indiana limestone. From here, you'll find some of the best views from campus of the Rocky Mountains, making it a great place to have lunch or take a break from practicing. We are an all Steinway school, and our practice rooms have windows, so our students appreciate having natural light and a view during marathon practice sessions. At the end of the hall is our suite of virtual practice rooms. In these, you can control the amount of reverb the space gives, allowing you to replicate all sorts of situations, from a recording studio to a large performance hall or cathedral. You can also record directly from the room, incorporating the reverb into your recording. There are also 2 rooms in this suite that hold our practice organ and our practice harpsichord. Unless the virtual practice rooms are reserved, all 36 rooms on this floor are first come, first served. Onto the 4th floor, where you'll find faculty studios, the computer/keyboard lab, and the music library. The music library collection includes music scores, audio and video recordings, and books and journals on music and the study of music. The friendly staff members are available to help you find whatever you need, and the desk area offers a quiet and sunny space for studying. In order to utilize the space to the fullest, the shelves move on automatic power. We have a robust audiovisual collection available for checkout and a listening center on site with equipment for listening to CDs, audio cassettes, vinyl records, and for viewing DVDs, VHS tapes, or laser discs. Next to the library is the computer/keyboard lab, where our music technology and class piano courses are taught. The computers are equipped with all the programs that musicians would typically encounter, as well as Ableton launchpads. The rest of the 4th floor and the 3rd floor house our faculty studios, which are spacious rooms that feature hardwood floors, large windows, and Steinway grand pianos. The 2nd floor is actually the main level, where the public entrances to the building and the administrative offices are. This is where you'll also find our 4 classrooms, like this lecture hall, which holds about 30 students. The U shape of the desks encourages the Socratic method of teaching, which is a guided discussion rather than a lecture. The 1st floor contains the recital salon, ensemble rehearsal rooms, the recording studio, instrument lockers, and practice spaces for percussion and harp. The Williams Recital Salon is an intimate venue that seats about 80. It's primarily a performance and rehearsal space for our small jazz groups and classical chamber groups, as well as a lecture room for academic classes. There are 3 large ensemble rehearsal rooms, and each one is tailored to the groups that typically rehearse there. Room 130 is the largest, and it's where the orchestra and wind ensemble rehearse. Jazz ensembles rehearse in room 140, which has carpeting and sound absorption panels throughout to deaden the space, as well as a dropped ceiling, all to make the space acoustically resemble a jazz club. Room 100 is our vocal ensemble rehearsal room. The wood floors and high ceilings are well suited for choirs and opera singers, and a false proscenium with spotlights provides the sensation of being on stage. All 3 large rehearsal rooms have observation decks, and the one in the vocal rehearsal room is accessible by stairs. Lamont Opera Theater often takes advantage of this during staging rehearsals. Our state-of-the-art recording studio is a unique feature of Lamont. We offer a Bachelor of Music in Recording and Production, in which students are learning how to be recording engineers and producers, while also growing in a musical area of study. The recording studio includes a full recording booth, a river rock room for percussion, a small recording booth for solo instruments, and a control room. Our tour continues back on the 2nd floor, or the main floor. We'll leave the North Wing, or Trevorrow Hall, and head over to the performance spaces that make up the South Wing. We first pass through Joy Burns Plaza, which serves multiple purposes. During the day, students use it as a gathering spot or a place to study. And when we have performances, the plaza serves as the foyer and the location of large receptions. From here, you can access Hamilton Recital Hall, which seats about 250 and hosts everything from chamber music performances and solo recitals to master classes and performance classes. This organ was designed specifically for this hall and built in Germany, then taken apart, shipped over, and reassembled in Hamilton Hall. The acoustics of this hall are excellent and can be adjusted by raising or lowering the acoustical curtains. We end our tour in Gates Concert Hall, which seats about 1,000. This is where we hold all of our large ensemble performances like orchestra, opera, wind ensemble, jazz orchestra, and our choirs. Gates Hall is an acoustically perfect space, which means that you get the same sound experience no matter where you sit and no matter how full the hall is. Well, that ends our virtual tour. For more information, please get in touch with Lamont Admission at 303-871-6973 or musicadmission@du.edu. The Lamont School of Music is housed in the Robert and
Okay, welcome back, everybody. And we have a stellar power roundhouse panel that is about to join us. Give us just one moment to work out another little technical thing right here. Give me 1 second here. So I'm going to go out of order of my introductions while we work on a little technical thing right here. So I want to start by first saying that all of these wonderful panelists are people that I know, and I'm very honored and flattered and excited by that. We're going to switch back now because I see her. So the newest friend and we got to talk a little bit on Tuesday. I feel like we were brother and sister because we just fell right in, and she was ribbing me like my sister would, and it was all good. I had a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
And we laughed. We had a good old time. We could have gone for at least another 30 minutes.
Absolutely.
But, yeah. I want to introduce to everyone here Dr. Nkeiru Okoye, composer. She is a composer with a gift for incorporating many influences and styles within her work. Nkeiru Okoye is perhaps best known for her opera that we just got highlighted by Dr. Jones, Harriet Tubman, When I Cross That Line to Freedom, and the orchestral work, Voices Shouting Out, which is an artistic response to 9/11, and her suite, African Sketches, which has been performed by pianists around the globe. Dr. Okoye is a Guggenheim Fellow. Yay! She is profiled in the Music of Black Composers coloring book and Routledge's African American Music, an introduction textbook. She is the inaugural recipient of the International Florence Prize Award for Composition. A recent New York Times article mentions Okoye's work would make a fitting grand opening for an opera company's post-pandemic relaunch. And I agree wholeheartedly. Everyone, please welcome Nkeiru Okoye. Next up, I would like to bring to your attention another friend. I was starting to say dear friend, and you are a dear friend. I just regret that we have not spent enough time together. So that has to be on, not my bucket list, but Angela, we got to do some more stuff. I just got to be in your presence more. You're so international and all of that. But Ms. Angela Brown personifies the ideal soprano, sheer vocal power, luxurious finesse, and shimmering high pianissimos. With a charming personality, you can see that right now, larger than life, she unites opera, pop, gospel in one sensational voice and has graced the leading opera and symphonic stages across 6 continents. We got to get you on that last one. It's a little cold there, so you might not want to be there. That's all right. An artist, a featured artist on the 2-time Grammy Award-winning recording, Ask Your Mama. Angela's international reputation continues to grow. Her highly successful Metropolitan Opera debut, which is probably the first time I saw you, in the title role of Aida, captured instant attention from international print and broadcast media and catapulted Angela onto the world's prestigious opera and symphonic stages. Headlines from the New York Times read, "At last, an Aida," and CBS Weekend News proclaimed, "The future of opera has arrived," followed by features on the front page of the New York Times, on CNN, in Oprah Magazine, Essence Magazine, Ebony Magazine, Classical Singer, Reader's Digest, and Psychology Today. And what I want her to talk about today especially is the groundbreaking success of her show, Opera, from a sister's point of view. That's right. Come on, come on. You are welcome warmly, my friend Angela Brown. That's right, that's right. And last but certainly not least is somebody I have known for many, many years. I can say we are good friends. And I'm going to say this before I read a little bit of her bio. Dr. Jenkins, Reverend Dr. Jenkins, is a dear friend. You know, it was Maya Angelou that said, people may not remember what you said, but they will remember how you made them feel. And Dr. Jenkins, she even forgot this at one point. I had to remind her, but my mother was very, very ill at one point. It was in the hospital. And we served at Calvary Baptist Church in Jamaica, Queens. And I knew that, you know, the hospitals, they will let a minister in at any time to visit the sick. And I said, Dr. Jenkins, would you go and please visit my mother? Because I want to see my mom. And if I go with you, then to see her. And she said yes. And this was like 10 at night or something like that. Only your good friends will do those things for and with you. And she did. And I got to see my mother while she was infirmed in the hospital, really, really ill. And my mom passed away about 4 years ago. It was actually this week, 4 years ago, on May the 10th. And Reverend Jenkins was so kind. There was no other person that I wanted to preach my mama's eulogy. And Reverend Jenkins said, of course I will. And you know, she sent her home in a fashion that only, you know, a few could. And because of that, Reverend Jenkins is a friend beloved like no other. She can do no wrong in my eyes. So Reverend Dr. Lisa D. Jenkins is the 10th pastor and first woman to lead the St. Matthew's Baptist Church located in Harlem, New York. Since assuming the pastorate in July 2013, Reverend Jenkins has implemented an AIDS HIV program in partnership with the New York City Council Faith-Based HIV/AIDS Initiative and the National Black Leadership Commission on AIDS of New York City. She has reorganized the church ministries to reflect the mission of equipping the community as service to our Lord Jesus Christ and is placing emphasis on the importance of youth and young adult involvement. Reverend Jenkins is the first woman to address the Ministers Division of the Empire Baptist Missionary State Convention and was the first female to be appointed to the convention's Pastors Division. She was also the state coordinator for the convention's newly formed Women in Ministry Division. In addition, she served as a 2015-2016 Faith and Justice Fellow for the Federation of Protestant Welfare Agencies in partnership with the New York Theological Seminary. She has also served as a member of Manhattan's Community Board 10 and on the Manhattan Borough President's Rikers Island Task Force Initiative. Dr. Jenkins is the principal and CEO of LDJ Global Connections, LLC, which is committed to empowering individuals and strengthening teams for increased productivity and compliance by achieving cultural competency through high-content workshops, seminars, and keynote presentations. People, I want you to welcome my dear friends, these sisters, these women, these brilliant women, gifted to this panel discussion. What we want today, following with what Dr. Alisha Lola Jones has presented to us, I would like for each of you in turn that have just now joined us to talk about your work as Black women and how your work has served to elevate and to bring attention to the stories of not only our people, but specifically Black women. How has your work engaged with that? How has that work impacted the community? Anyone can jump in, or I'll just start calling names. Y'all have it. Go ahead.
Well, I'll start. I'm Angela Brown, and I have a show called Opera from a sister's point of view that demystifies opera for audiences that normally wouldn't go. And I have a foundation entitled Mourning Brown that brings culture to cultural deserts. So that foundation helps to push opera from a sister's point of view out to other communities, schools, and organizations where at first, when I created Opera from a Sister's Point of View, it was in conjunction with me being at an opera house or at a doing a symphony gig, and I would do their educational outreach. But with the foundation, I'm able to take it broader. And what I have found in working and doing Opera from a Sister's Point of View is it helps to let people know that people like me do this kind of work. We sing this kind of music too. Because if you look at the storylines of opera are about the peoples of the world. So why shouldn't the person performing it reflect those people? I don't care how many people you paint up. Aida, let me let you see that. Aida is an African opera about two African warring nations with a love triangle in it. Okay, so it's African love story. You have Carmen, which is a Latinx opera story. You have Tosca, which is an Italian opera story. You have Turandot and Madame Butterfly, which are Asian subject opera stories. So you can find yourself in the collective. You just have to know that you have permission to go and choose your seat and sit down. That it is not that deep. Opera is not that deep, honey. It's just a story set to music, and that can be very entertaining. So my mission has been to make it palatable for the general public, something that they can enjoy and like from little babies up to adults. So opera from a sister's point of view has taken me all across the United States and parts of the world, and I'm very proud of it and hope to be able to do more good work.
Awesome, awesome. I'll say that the work that I do, I've learned that a great way for me to uplift others, particularly sisters, is to just show up. And I have found, and I didn't always know this, I'm an introvert. People don't know that, but I'm an introvert and I'm shy. But I know everyone says that, but I have a passion more for helping people. I have a passion for empowering people, particularly my people. And so I have that overpowers my introvertness and my shyness, the fact that I need to make a difference in this world. And by showing up, I let other women, young women in particular, know that it is okay to be present. And not only is it okay to be present, but it's okay to have a voice. Not just a voice, but your voice, and how important it is to control your narrative. I mean, I'm at this age right now. I have to just say, I'm at an age right now how I just don't care no more. And when I say I just don't care, when I say I don't care no more, you know, I used to worry about how I showed up. I used to worry about every little thing. And now I just realize that there's so much that's important in this world before I leave this world that I need to do for other people. And my voice and my presence and what I've done is simply to be there and as I rise, others rise. You know, I cannot be elevated without others coming with me if I'm connected to them. And so not just showing up, but being connected. Because if I'm not connected, then we can't go the same place. And I ain't going no place but up. So if I'm going up, they got to come up with me, because y'all got me, right? Y'all got me? Okay. So we've got to show up. And the church is in my opinion, is the most patriotic space. I can't get my words right. Even though I'm a preacher, I say it all the time. It's the most sexist place that I've come in contact with, that I've entered, honestly. Somebody might have another space that they could argue that with me, but it is a very oppressive place that I've often said that I would leave. But I've not left because there are so many other young women who are becoming more powerful than me, which is fine, because I have already been there before them. And so before I retire, which will occur real soon, I need to make sure that I continue showing up in any way that I can, and that I continue controlling my own narrative. And that even though Shirley Chisholm said, if there's no seat at the table, bring your own seat, I need to let those sisters behind me know, look, there may not even be a seat that you can bring. Create and build your own table and your own seat, and invite those that you want to your own table and your own seat. And so that's how I continue to help those that are around me and that are coming up, is to just be me, to just show up and do whatever it is that I can.
Ooh, Dr. Okoye?
You know, it's hard to follow such dynamic women, you know, because first we had the address by Dr. Jones. And frankly, I want to take your class. I want to learn more about what I was doing when I was writing Harriet Tubman.
Being excellent, that's what you was doing. Okay.
And then, you know, Angela, you may not remember this. I met you through opera from a sister's point of view, back when it was in Baltimore and you were doing it with Kishna Davis.
Yes,
yes,
yes. I do remember that.
And so, you know, and just the what Reverend Jenkins said about showing up. You know, I create, as a composer, I create the party. Now I depend on producers to, you know, to produce the party, but in the end, if I'm not there, there's no story to party about. And so I love this idea of, you know, people coming in and celebrating with us. And so you both talked about bringing opera out to people. And just by writing this narrative, writing these stories initially about Harriet Tubman, now, I did not have someone like a Dr. Jones to come in, or an Angela Brown to come in and tell me, hey, this is why you should be involved in opera. A lot of people know I was not in the opera camp until I found myself writing one. And at this point, I'm just like, well, wait a minute. But the thing about it is that for me, coming from an instrumental tradition, there wasn't anything for me in opera. People didn't tell me about Black opera singers. You know, you know, of course, about Marian Anderson and Leontine Price, but what are these stories? They're not stories that I could relate to. And of course, now they're old friends, but where was me? What represented me? You know, so Harriet Tubman is kind of a response to that, but it also has the benefit of creating disciples. You know, we have people who don't even like opera. They don't even like classical music. They're where, you know, they're further back from where I was. And, you know, when we started to do Harriet Tubman, we just told people, hey, there's something going on about Harriet Tubman. And we didn't tell them it was opera. And so we just hooked them all in. Oh, hey, you're gonna love this. You know, this is about you. And they would come in and I would see so many times, I'd see in the faces of people, no matter where I brought it to, the look on people's faces. Now, I never, ever worried about bringing white people into the audiences, because white people are going to come anyway. There's the understanding that this as an art form is for them. My goal was diversify. Let's see some of us in that concert hall. And so there's always going to be some of us who are going to push through and say, hey, I can belong here. But that's not good enough. It's just not good enough. So I am writing stories about us. And I think all three of you touched on this idea of stories about Black people needing to come from Black people, taking ownership in the stories. And what I have found time and time again, especially now as people know about Harriet Tubman, it's not just that, you know, some of the critics are saying, hey, we don't understand the language of it. You know, why isn't there slave dialect in there? You know, and I will sit down and I will defend it, having to defend my work. Now, this is something that before the US was formed, Phyllis Wheatley, the first poet, she was put on trial for her intellect. Isn't it something that even now I am still being put on trial just for saying, I can do this? You know what? I'm still doing it. So I am creating stories, not just about enslaved people. And I have to say that even with Harriet Tubman, this was not a story of sorrow. So many people see us as our sorrow. Harriet Tubman is a story about sisterhood. And some of the other stories that I'm writing, they are about contemporary, they're just about contemporary situations. So if you think of Shonda Rhimes, who is, sometimes she'll write one thing, sometimes she'll write something else. It's not necessarily for a Black audience, she's just being representative. Now, some people will see this and say, hey, wait a minute. This Black woman is writing stories that's not about us. She's got to be radical. And I have to admit, when I first heard, Dr. Jones's, there was a paper about Black Messianism, I was like, wait a minute, you're putting words in my mouth. But she knew better than I knew that the world perceives what I do as being radical. She also knew the traditions, because I'm looking at this as a piece of music. And so now, as I'm moving on to stories about contemporary African Americans, and I have characters who, there's one story that I'm doing, it's going to premiere at Arizona State. It's about a Black beauty queen. Who does that? Who thinks about that? But it's in some of our realities, Dr. Jones. So this is a story that you can look at and say, wait a minute, this is a different narrative of Black women that I've heard of, and it's an integrated cast, and it challenges some perspectives. It talks about the harm done by Blackface and Blackface dolls. It talks about, it's a corporate caper, and it's, in some ways, it's similar to The Marriage of Figaro. And just think about it. It's a comedy written by a Black woman. It's not vulgar. It's not about disenfranchised Blacks. It's a corporate caper. And so this one, of course, what else do you see? You see sexual harassment in corporate America. You see presumptions about African Americans. There's this fixation on a physical appearance in youth. And of course, there are corporate attempts at quick fixes for institutionalized racism. Well, who better to think of these stories than Black women? That's what we do. And so as I'm writing these stories and the casts are integrated, I am writing roles for Black women that are about Black women, and I'm changing the narrative of what people know about us and the way people portray us. Because up until now, the one figure that people see us as is Bess. Isn't that a bit antiquated?
That is awesome. Thank you, Dr. Okoye. I want to piggyback off something that you said and then hear from the panel, actually redirect. You were talking about people coming to concert halls for, to see themselves, or that's what I heard in there. And I thought about that. Yes, what brings Black people to these concert halls? It is their stories, their songs, their experience, and seeing themselves on the stage. I've been here in Denver at the University of Denver for almost 5 years now, and the most I have seen Black people come into Gates Hall is when the director of the Newman Center at that point, Ingram, I can't remember her first name at the moment, but she brought a duo of classical violinists called Black Violin. And they came in, and I walked into that hall and I was like, where did all of these Black people come from? Now, these are classically trained violinists playing a little bit of everything. But I said to myself, they came because they wanted to see themselves. And we, to a lesser degree, I've seen that influx of Black people come when the Spirituals Project Choir performs. So what you said, it just rang so true for me. We will come to these spaces if we see ourselves reflected, not only on the stage, but in the stories being told. That is so, so important. So I want to, but I want to pivot just for a moment and go back to something that Dr. Jones mentioned, this quote that music is a woman. I thought that was so profound. And I'm wondering if we can get all of the panelists, including Dr. Jones, as much as you would like, to kind of talk about that idea, that picture of music being a woman. What does that mean? How does that resonate for you? And lest we forget, Dr. Jenkins, you're also a singer. You don't claim that, but you know, Dr. Jenkins used to sing with Hezekiah Walker, y'all. That's right.
Am I unmuted? In the back row. I have the cover, okay, from the album that won the Grammy. I'm there in the back row.
On the stage, in the back row, on the stage.
That's right.
See what you just did there, the Grammy. I see all what you did.
Yes.
What we're doing today.
Okay, y'all go ahead. What's next? What's next?
No, but please discuss. Music is a woman. What does that mean? What kind of imagery does that conjure for you? How does that debunk what is perhaps a dominant narrative? And when we think about what music is, who participates in music, who controls the musical spaces, who, to use your phrase, Dr. Jones, who controls the sonic template? What does that mean for music to be a woman? I would love to hear what you all have to say about that.
Well, I would like to just say, when I think of music, because that is a beautiful phrase. Me and my agent were texting back and forth saying, oh, we love that. Because when I think of a woman bringing forth the moans and the groans of childbirth into the atmosphere, and that is life. That is music. Anything that we're telling our children about life and growing, that is music. Music is a woman. It's everything that we are. It's creation. That's what I see.
I don't have anything else to say because no, for real. That's when and I'm not a musician trained, but I feel music. Like when you feel the birthing, and it's not always a birthing pain, people say birthing pains, but sometimes, it's this feeling of release. And, when you give birth, that's what it is. It's a release. And so there's the creativity, there is the release, there is the energy, all of these things. There is a synergy that occurs, that can only occur with this music, but that only a woman can create this type of synergy when it comes to birth, when it comes to creation. They say, man is created, they say in the image of God. Come on, it's got to be the woman because God created and woman creates. And so we are the ones that are making music constantly over and over and over. And so that quote, I'm all for it. I'm all for it. Okay.
That's a t-shirt. That's a hashtag, boo. It sure is.
Amen. You know what? Oh gosh, you were so hard to follow. I don't come and try and say something after that. It just makes me seem less profound.
No, just speak.
Okay, I will say, as a woman who is a composer, it's so interesting that in other cultures, and my father's culture, women are the master musicians. In Western culture, it's always men. You think of, who are the composers? Bach, Beethoven, Brahms, Haydn. They're all interesting fellows. They're fun. But notice I didn't say they're all good men. See, but whoever they were, what about the women around them? Why is it always about the men? But more specifically, it's about the white men. People often ask me, what's it like to be a BIPOC creator? And this one time is during, this became really, really this catchphrase during this past, during the pandemic. And I just lost it. I called up my sister, Dr. Jones, and we I am not a BIPOC anything. I am a conservatory trained composer. When people ask questions like that, it shows how far we have to go. It means that the assumption that it is assumed that music is created by men, specifically white men. And when you use the term BIPOC composer, BIPOC creator, BIPOC anything, what does that mean? It means that we are all outside the canon. We need to show people it's not just that we are inside the canon, that we're doing these same things that our white male counterparts have done. It's simply that we own the canon. This is something that we do, that we are excellent at this canon. And when we have people talking about, oh, well, we're in this crisis, we need to show our solidarity for Black people, so let's find a BIPOC creator. Wait a minute. What are you saying? Just listen to that, BIPOC creator. So it means that white people, white men specifically, are composers.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean about us? It means that, well, I don't think there are any Black conservatory trained composers, so let's lower the bar some. Let's just find some random people around, and we'll make them into we'll do this art music. How incredibly patronizing! How incredibly stupid! How offensive! How dehumanizing!
Yeah.
And yet we are here. We're composers. We are women, and we are being heard.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If I may add, this is I literally want to get like my Garrett's popcorn and just like sit back and
After 7, I can't eat.
In solidarity, I won't.
Open up my Snickers.
Go on, girl.
I mean, I do wax poetic when I hear music is a woman. I do. I would like to offer up for the music researchers in the midst, if I can help somebody, particularly a music researcher, I hope y'all caught that musical allusion there. I really would like to help folks understand that if you're going to do Black music research, if you look closely at Black music research, there is no way you can do it without referencing the educators as Black women and talking about the trailblazers.
Yes.
You are unaware of citing Black women as the bearers of an oral tradition. By that, I am saying they may not be in a monograph length work. They may not have written an article, but they are living epistles. They are the people who are our educator, giving us the oral tradition and are equally legitimate to cite. They are the divas who are giving us global acclaim, as Mrs. Angela Brown. They are the preacher who can move seamlessly through the oral tradition as a singer and preacher on the back row of a Grammy-winning album. They are the composer. The everydayness of Black utterance is embodied in Black women. And so for those of you who purport to do Black music research, I need to see a roll call. Otherwise, I don't take you seriously. You don't understand the tradition. It has to be Black.
You just knit that together. I love it.
Yes. I'm sorry. Can I just add to that when there are producers, any of you who are producers out there, as you are looking at works that you're going to produce, be so careful of that colonial mindset. You know, how are you looking at Black people? You know, a lot of times the architecture is right there. It's like, okay, we will give you a space, but we want you to sit in the back of the room. You know, we're gonna produce this piece, and we're gonna put it in the small room where, you know, that's where Black people go. It's causing segregation. People don't like it, and it makes them to not take you seriously. When you're writing stories, when you are cultivating these stories, are they urban stories? I don't see any of us as being urban. I remember someone came to me, "Oh, can you write a hip opera?" And I was like, "Excuse me, what?" What? Because I'm Black, right? I should do hip hop. Yeah, yeah. And I'm not invalidating hip hop, but why not ask me to write real opera that's for everybody? And so when you're curating these things, you know, a lot of people think that, oh, there's Black people. They don't just say Black people. It's not about the underprivileged Black person, and it starts there.
Yeah.
It starts there.
Yeah, yeah. That's powerful. Those code words that are often used. It's we have to be very, I'll say, people have to be very intentional about taking off that lens, the colonial lens that you mentioned, because they've been walking around with it all their lives. And we should be, as humans, we should be intelligent individuals, people. We should be evolving. It seems like we are devolving, but we should be evolving. And if we are evolving, we should know better, and we should be able to take off, and I'm just going to say we, but I really mean other folk, take off those lenses of colonization and be intentional about it. Know that it is something that needs to be removed if you are going to move forward. Yes. As a human being, as an artist, absolutely, but as a human being. Yeah, thank you for that. Roger, we can't hear you, Roger.
Roger, what?
What do you say, Roger, huh?
Yeah.
I am overwhelmed with the power of women in this room, so I get muted, you know. But no. So, but Dr. Jones and Dr. Okoye, something that you all said about, well, Dr. Jones, you spoke about honoring the oral tradition in an academic setting which does not value it on the same level. These are my words now, but it doesn't seem to value the power and the importance of oral tradition and history in the same way, and I'm going to quote now a term that a Black priest has used, Clarence Joseph Rivers. He calls it the ocular tradition, the written tradition. And if you're going to deal in music of African and African American traditions, or just culture in general, one must understand that it is rooted in the oral traditions. And to not have that voice present, you're missing the point. I really appreciated that aspect that you brought up. Let's pivot again. Dr. Okoye, I also take notes. So I have my notes, and you shared, Dr. Jones, this excerpt from the award show, Viola Davis. She said, the only thing that separates Black women from everybody else is opportunity. Mm-hmm. And that speaks a little bit to Dr. Okoye, what you were just talking about in terms of being in these male-dominated spaces. I wonder if all of you could kind of give us some insights to your perspective on that. What are, maybe even if you could, Dr. Okoye, you already have, but we could certainly hear more, talk about, can we talk about some of the specific ways? You've already done that, Dr. Okoye, but some of the specific ways in which there are obstacles that prevent Black women from having opportunity to do what they are already gifted to do.
Well, I'll just say, because y'all ain't jumping there quick enough. I'll just say that my mother has taught me when she was here, never to see anything as an obstacle, because you're already shooting yourself in the foot there. You're already saying to your psyche, you can't, or it's going to be hard, or it's going to be, put your blinders on and do what you want to do. That's what I did with Opera from a Sister's Point of View. That's basically what I did when I decided to go to Oakwood University and study classical music, and then on to Indiana University to study, to get my graduate work. I just did it. I was, quote unquote, I always say this about myself, too stupid to stop. I did what I wanted to do. I made my own opportunities, because when it came to Opera from a Sister's Point of View, I knew early on that the opera companies weren't going to be checking for a sister forever. So I was going to need some vehicle to support myself. And since what I do is sing, it was going to be in the performing realm. Well, I started doing Opera from a Sister's Point of View because I was looking out on the audiences of the world as I was singing in the opera houses of the world, and I didn't see very many people that looked like me looking back at me. So I said, well, at first it's a Black thing. So I went into the churches and I went into the schools. And then as I started doing it, because I think one of you already said that our other cultural brothers and sisters will show up anyway, but I also realized that white folks don't like opera either. So I had to make it a situation to where I made it palatable. So I made the opportunity for myself. And it's true, your talents will make a way for you.
Absolutely. I just want to make sure I understand correctly. How do we make our own opportunities, Brother Roger, or what should we be saying to other people as far as how opportunities are manifested? I want to make sure I get it right.
Well, actually, what I'm asking is, oftentimes I find that statements are made, but we don't name a thing. And sometimes when we don't name a thing, when we don't identify it, just for instance, if you don't acknowledge, say, for instance, you're an alcoholic and the things that drive you to these addictions, then you can't, conquer them. So I'm asking us to identify what are some of these obstacles, and better yet, because I hate just talking, actionable. What are the ways, Angela just said it, what are the ways in which we can tear down these obstacles?
Yeah.
What Angela's doing is doing that.
Yeah, I guess I was having a difficult time, and I still am, articulating this in a very diplomatic way also, is that
say it.
You don't want me to, okay? I'm not retiring from the ministry just yet. I still got to hold my job.
Speak.
We have named so many things over the course of the centuries. That's why I'm having a difficult time. We have said what we need. Opportunity, access. We need to be looked at as humans without dehumanizing us, without being looked at with a lens of otherness, even though we are uniquely Black because of our experience. Respect that, who we are as Black, as women, as mothers. Even if you have not given birth to a child, you've still given birth to something. You've given birth to an opera. We're birth makers. We make things. We create. So I'm having a hard time. I'm just hard-headed. Also, I'm hard-headed. That's what my mother always said. And so when people say that something cannot be done, you cannot preach, there are no such, women are not supposed to preach, for me, it just doesn't register. They must be talking to somebody else. They're not talking to me when they say that women can't preach. They said that I was not supposed to, my guidance counselor in high school said that I should not be going to a 4-year college. She said I should be going to a trade school or something else. And when I got my doctoral degree, I was really looking her up. Sadly, she had passed. So I couldn't be petty. But the whole thing about it is that we have to not hear the negative no's. We have to be assertive and optimistic and stand on faith and be believe that these things can be done. And I believe that if we continue doing this as individuals and as a body of people, then we can't help but just show up, and people will say, oh wow, that's what they've been talking about all these decades, all these centuries. Oh wow, access. Oh wow, to be treated as people who are intelligent and not be, as who was it that said, on trial for her intelligence? Okay, I love that. I'm gonna preach that sometime soon. I'll give you I'll cite you, you'll get the credit, but it's something that we need to really, really understand, that I think that we can't even rely on people, others anymore, because we've been naming these things for too long, Roger. And I'm tired of naming stuff. I really am. I'm just go claim it. And I'm not even of that theology, name it and claim it, but I'm just go claim it. I'm walking through doors, and I invite everybody that wants to walk through them doors with me. Create the, oh, there's no door? Oh, I'm sorry. We got tools. Let's create a door then.
Yes. Yes.
And walk through it.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I hear you, Dr. Jenkins. Let me tell you,
call me Lisa. You said I was your friend. Stop it.
You know what? What did we say at the intro? We got to put some respect on it, not because I don't know.
This is right. But I'm not looking at nobody else but us right now. The five of us.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So my friend,
shade to everybody else, but this is our like little living room area here.
Right. So I was just gonna say though, it reminds me of last. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Can I get tagged in, please?
Yes.
Dr. Jenkins, can you tag me in, please?
What you need?
Tag. Just tag.
Tag.
Okay.
Similarly, I'm thinking of our diva, Angela Brown, and I'm thinking of what you are saying. And I'm gonna tell y'all one of the office hours comments that I tell my students. And yes, my melanated students, there's a remix that I give, which is, we are not seeking plantations. We are not looking for other plantations.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm thinking about obstacles, I'm thinking about the ways in which we have really assumed plantation economies in our lives. Holding to folks in our decision-making and our ability to walk away from tables that do not serve us, because we have been taught to seek other plantations. I feel my help. See, I went to Appomattox around Christmas with my spouse and goddaughter, and we went to a civil rights museum that was sponsored by the descendants of the Confederacy. And in that museum, they said that there were folks who were freed, and upon their release from enslavement, they were just released. No 40 acres and a mule, no promises kept. They were just released. And some actually found their ways back to the plantation because they were under-resourced, and that was all they knew. And for many of us, we have to actually do that when and where we enter. We actually need to talk to each other about stocks, which, by the way, we were the first to be traded on the stock. So I'm getting my reparations from there first, you understand? And number two, we need to talk about owning our own businesses. Thank you, Diva Brown, for talking about understanding how to monetize yourself, monetizing yourself. And then third, I view retirement, specifically retirement, as the highest form of liberation. When we can actually close a chapter on something, allow it to live, and actually enjoy the fruits of our labor. And so for me, removing the obstacles is removing the ways in which our progeny, whether they are folks in our congregation, our composition apprentices, or young artists in our opera program, that our progeny understand we don't seek other plantations. We create platforms for each other. I will make sure I occupy the space with other Black women, because who else is gonna give us VIP?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
even with Opera from a Sister's point of view, I have an addendum to that, which is Opera from a Sister's point of view, Generation Next, where I shine a light on the young up and coming Black opera singers who need an opportunity to be heard on my platform. We do have to continue to lift one another up. I'm with you.
I will also add here that a lot of times when someone puts a barrier in front of me, it is my sisters who will do some troubleshooting. You know, I remember one of my first professional barriers that was put in front of me. I was in grad school, and actually let's go back because Alisha and I have the same alma mater, and we were taught a curriculum that was not inclusive, and being instilled with that for 4 years, it's tiring, it's wearying, it's detrimental to your soul. And in fact, they told me to give up. I still have the letter, but they said, you know, this composition thing is not working out for you. You know what? Someone believed. Someone believed. Even when I didn't believe, I was about to drop out. But Noel DaCosta believed. And so here these people had put this barrier in front of me. And I thought, they've asked me to leave and I didn't really like it. But now that they've asked me to leave, I'm like, oh, you know what? Y'all took me in. Y'all gonna graduate me. And it just gave me new life. It gave me the will to move on. And when I went to Rutgers to study with Noel DaCosta, because that's where he was, they laughed at him. They said, why are you taking this girl? You know, she doesn't have any talent. Well, it took a year for me to unlearn. You think about that Lauryn Hill, Lauryn Hill thing. You have to unlearn these things that are taught to you, And so after I was winning the awards, and after they had done all of this, the guys got together and did a program called The Composers of Rutgers University. They did not invite me. I went crying to the one Black woman who was there in the program. And she said, well, Nkeiru, boys will be boys. So we're going to do our own program. So we did a Black History Month program. Suddenly, the guys were saying, well, I wish I had a Black History Month program. I'm like, oh, excuse me.
All the history is you.
So the next year, we were told, hey, we're going to give you, the dean tells us, we're going to give you another Black History Month program. So I'd done all the work for it, but we're going to give this to you. And then the same dean wanted to teach me a lesson, because that's what people want to do to Black people who are uppity, especially to Black women who believe in themselves, who can assert themselves. And so she scheduled a concert in the Better Hall across town. Now, it's a very small town, but that evening, the big orchestra concert. So again, I go crying to my sisters. And then we had someone else to join us. And I said, we need a celebrity. I'm not going to be outdone. It's the whole thing. If you think of oysters, it's that pressure inside of them that create pearls, And so this pressure. So they were obstacles. So I said, okay, we need a celebrity. This woman's sister was Nettie in The Color Purple. I didn't know that. So she says, would Danny Glover do it? Sure. Danny, I need a favor. And so there's this picture in the paper of me conducting Danny Glover. It kind of didn't make any difference what the piece was. The idea was that here is the standard. You keep telling me that I'm not nothing. You know what? Yes, I am. Yes, I am. And that's what we need to say, yes, I am.
Wow. So we only have a few moments left. I could sit and just enjoy sitting and listen to you all share. But listen, we want to allow, we didn't get many questions before. So folks that are in attendance, you have an opportunity to interact with these awesome women. This is your chance to ask that burning question, something that was sparked by something that was said and you would like maybe to be expanded upon. Now is the time. Otherwise, I got plenty of questions, or I can just, let the ladies go for a little longer. You have your moment, everybody. Yes, and please direct your question to the chat. Again, I think folks are just in awe of you and they just can't formulate a thought in your presence. But then I'll ask another question. So I told you I take notes. Let's see, wait. So we have a question from another good friend of mine, Dr. Kim Harris. Please, who you bring in the energy. I'm sorry, I'm having a internet moment. Please speak on who you bring in the energy and inspiration of the ancestors.
More and more, I'll say real quick, more and when, hey, Kim, how you doing, by the way? It is my mother. And Roger, you knew my mama. Roger smiling because my mother was something else. My mother did not take any mess. She did not have, she never even finished grade school. She was born in 1921 in Montezuma, Georgia. And she had very little education. My father did not have any at all. And my mother, and I can show you, but I can tell you, Roger, wow, Roger just put up a sermon title that had a running line, which was my mother's line. I can show you better than I can tell you. You think that you're going to do what or not do what? You think that I'm going to accept, I can show you, but thank you, Roger. That really embodies who she was. And so I really bring up her energy. And I never, growing as a child or even a young adult, it was always, oh, I'm never going to do that. Oh, I'm never going to, I'm never, no. And as the years have gone by, I have had to take her strength. I have come to understand why she did some of the things she did, having been born and, really born. You were born in 1921 in Montezuma, Georgia. You witnessed what things that she didn't even want to talk about, that I found out about when she was dead, because which let me know why she was the way she was. I thought oftentimes she was abrasive. I thought sometimes that she was, just quick to, but I realized that there was a reason, and I try to take that and apply some of her mechanisms to who I am and how I operate and navigate in the world. And so she was born in you know how science is, okay, with this whole, it's weird. The things that we can do nowadays with, fertility and all that stuff. So I just take her energy, and I go to people that say no, like that guidance counselor, like the pastors that when I gave my first sermon, as Brother Roger mentioned, at the state convention, many of them stood up and turned their backs or walked out. And I still continued to preach. That was what I was supposed to do. And I can show you better than I can tell you, boo. So thank you, Roger, for reminding me of that. But that encapsulates everything that my mother was. And she showed people better than she could tell them. And so even today, the fact that she not having much education, my father having none, and I'm able to only live in one of the most expensive cities in the country because they were savvy enough to purchase a house in 1966 and leave that to me. Otherwise, there's nowhere in the world I can live in New York City, but it's because of that foundation of my ancestors that have come before me. And I'm gonna decrease at this point before I get back, because I need the tissue ministry right now. So y'all, somebody else take over, okay?
I brought my tissues early on, honey, when the doctor was speaking. But I have to piggyback on that. My mother is who I listen to the most. I feel her feminine energy the more now than I ever have. This pandemic, it was very, detrimental to a lot of people, but it was also very cathartic. And I don't know what it's about it, but I feel her energy even more now. She always said, Angie, nothing beats a failure but a try. Girl, get on out there and do it. Go for your destiny. She would crack me up and then make me cry all at the same time. And that's who I feel is my mama.
I never met my grandmother, but I am her namesake with Lola. And I'm told that there are aspects of my journey that are in many ways a manifestation of her prayers, specifically being a migrant from Alabama to Maryland, born in the 1920s or so, unable to pursue education because of Jim Crow and life and being a mother. But she desired to study opera. She desired to study music in Chicago, and I ended up studying music in Chicago. She was a minister, and there were just things. As my life has unfolded, my mother has told me about it. But my grandma passed the year before I was born, having prophesied. There's the oral tradition, having prophesied that I would come, my sister would come, and then also did that good motherly comment, so none of y'all gonna name, she had 9 children, none of y'all gonna name your children after me, huh? None of y'all. So I don't get a namesake. So here I am shortly after she passed. And I can't help but think she's a part of the ancestral work that's occurring. And I would also like to lift up my dad who recently passed. He was an unabashed dad girl, a girl dad. Like my mother, who always has encouraged me to walk in my authority, in terms of ancestors, my dad spent a lot of time talking to my sister and I, and just affirming any moments of bravery or giftedness or vulnerability. And to this day, I walk with those insights. So I give thanks for that ancestor as well.
My mother's middle name is Lola.
Oh.
And the one thing that she did that permeates through all of this, the thing that allows me to be a composer, is that she never, ever told me that I was Black. We didn't use the terms white or Black in regard to race in our house. My mother was American, my father was Nigerian. She did not allow us to watch a lot of those Blaxploitation shows, so I wouldn't have any concept of the prejudice around African Americans, but neither would I know that we were supposed to be limited in what we could do. And so, it's just it's not so much what she said, it's what she didn't say. And when I think of ancestors, I have to put a shout out to my musical ancestors. And the day I met Noel DaCosta, he told me that I had musical ancestors. I had never known until that day. And he started pulling out all of the sheet music from people I had never heard of. And I was like, wait a minute, I have been robbed. I did not know that I had ancestors. And so I learned about, I took my first class at Oberlin College because there's a college that's there. And I learned about Black women. I took that course that we read that book, Where and Where I Enter. And I learned about Black women in the USA. And then I went off and I studied our music. And there was a symposium that Detroit Symphony had. And someone had told me about it. And suddenly there I was in the midst of my musical ancestors. And so I'm just, Hale Smith, Wendell Logan, Roland Carter, Carmen Moore, Alvin Singleton, Bill Banfield, who Alisha mentioned earlier, William Grant Still, whose granddaughter does so many things in terms of opera. I'm just can't even think of all the different names that I could call at this moment. Of course, we have to think about our, Margaret Bonds, Undine Smith Moore, whose legacy is the reason why I ended up writing Harriet Tubman, because she had written the piece that I thought I was going to write about Martin Luther King. And of course, Florence Price. And so these are also my ancestors. And I learned about how they were able to put their culture into this Western art form. I was able to do the same.
This has been an incredible afternoon, evening, and I don't want to monopolize all of your time, and all good things must come to an end, but I want to say that I am so grateful for you all. A lot of that has been in the chat, referring to you all as just gorgeous, beautiful, and inspiring Black women, and I thank you. Nkeiru, I have not said this to you formally, but your music is inspirational to me. When I hear your writing, it inspires me. I fancy myself as a composer. Some people tell me I need to own it, but I think of myself as a person who likes to write sometimes, but you are a composer. You are a composer, and your music is inspiring. Angela, your singing and just your being is inspiring, and I thank you for being here. Alisha Lola Jones, you are inspiring. I feel like I learned so much just from being in your presence. I wish we had time to unpack that thing you said about oppressive listening to music. And when you talked about sonic biases and assumptions, to unpack that is another 30 minutes of wisdom. You, I predict, are going to carry on the traditions of Portia Maltsby and Melanie Burnham and go way farther than them because of your reach and how God has just blessed you. I don't usually talk in terms of those theological terms, but I'm talking now because you are so gifted. You are such an intellectual. That's why people want to know what you think, because of your wisdom and your insights. And my friend, Reverend Dr. Lisa DJ, Lisa, okay. I am so grateful for our friendship and for the times that we are able to share, and you have spoken to me and unto me. It has been such a blessing. So for all of you ladies, I am so grateful that you said yes, because you didn't have to. So I'm so grateful that you said yes to grace our audience here with your presence, your experience, your wisdom, and your womanhood, birthing. I hope someone has been inspired to give birth to something today just from having listened to you and your words and your inspiration and sharing just a little bit of your journey. Listen, everybody, I thank all of you for coming today and to partaking of what these wonderful inspiring Black women have had to offer in this year of the women, year of the woman. Sorry. Thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for your attendance today. Don't forget about our concert on Saturday, the Spirituals Project Choir with our special guests, Linda Twine and Rosephanie Powell, two other wonderful friends of mine. Thank you for all my friends that showed up today. I so appreciate your presence, your sacrifice of time. Thank you, everybody, and good night.
Thank you, Roger.
Oh, let's stay in touch.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. And I want that cameo.
What